This is Craig Brown here. I've torn off my corporate gear and put on my tech gear, my t-shirt here, to have this conversation with Microsoft and open source. So why don't we jump into it? Joseph, why don't you give us an introduction?
Sure. My name is Joseph Durr. I'm a program manager at Microsoft, and I work on developer tools.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about open source and Microsoft. From an industry perspective, what would you say to an enterprise or a customer that's considering what open source can do for them?
Right. So I think it's important to look at open source and recognize that it's a community that's growing, and it's presenting an opportunity to everyone right now to participate. And the enterprises that figure out how to participate and participate well are going to have an edge on enterprises that don't. So whether it's contributing to existing projects, leveraging projects internally in your workflow, using them in your products, taking your projects and open sourcing them, these are all ways that you can participate and will provide tremendous benefit to your company.
Sure. So when you talk about participation in open source and the benefits that customers would have, why don't we talk about maybe a small example? So if I am a customer and I want to use open source to make some change, talk about a project or something where, how would I make that change? How would I go about getting started?
Yeah, in terms of getting started, well, I think one thing to do is look for a project that has good momentum and something that interests you in leveraging. And then as you get involved with it, one of the ways that you can contribute to it is you basically can either fork or clone it locally, work on it, and if you have a change that you want to present up to the community because you think it's a good change for everyone to get, you submit that as a pull request. It's actually very straightforward. This is something that's evolved into a very formal and effective workflow. So it's once you try it, you'll realize that this is actually quite easy to do.
Okay. So for those customers that who've never done this before, what fear factors might they see when it, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Right. I've just applied your expertise, and I've tried this project, and now it didn't work out. How easy is it to start over, or how many iterations? I mean, talk to me about what a customer might experience, being that this is new for them, and ultimately they want to roll something out to the enterprise.
Sure. So I think it's important to say with many of these open source projects, they've been worked on for many years, some of them, and they have a lot of really high-skilled people behind them, and there's been a lot of testing. And so it's quite easy to go and get these projects, try them out, prototype it internally for a bit. And that's really at no cost, right? You can try it out, spin it up, and see if it works for you, interact with it. And really you can do this so quickly because it's there available to you. And you can go from there. Learn how the community works. That's important to figure out, okay, who's running this? There's always a community that's governing that project. Find out how they work and how you can participate.
Okay, now here's a good question for you. How is Microsoft using open source?
So Microsoft's using open source all over the place. We're using it internally, we're using it in our projects. We are open sourcing a lot of our technology right now at actually a rapid rate. You look at .NET, you look at VS Code, these are open source efforts, and there are many others. We're also contributing to existing open source projects, and like for example, one of the things my team is working with is taking the Selenium standard, it's an open standard, and building tooling that supports that standard. So when you see an open standard like an open protocol, and you build products that match that protocol, that work with that protocol, it's going to make your products work better with all the other products in the world. So your customers are going to love that, okay, versus some siloed thing that you release that doesn't work with anything else.
Okay. So where do you think this open source platform is going? From a futuristic standpoint, maybe a 5-10 year outlook.
Well, a couple of things. One is I think the tooling around open source has evolved nicely lately in terms of how you manage projects, how you work with the community, how you evaluate where the trends are, which projects are taking off. And so the tooling around that space, and I expect to grow, and I think that will be great for everyone. I'm also excited about how the open source community has created a place where anyone can come in and participate. Okay. You basically need a computer and an internet connection. Okay. And if you've got the chops, if you've got the drive, you can go in and participate. And if you do good work, it can lead to a position at these companies where, you know, in the past, the way to get in would have required perhaps a university degree, industry experience. Well, now we're expanding you know, access into our industry through open source, and I'm very excited about that.
Okay, good. So open source is open, right, to everyone, and Microsoft is paving the way to showing how, you know, corporations and enterprises are actually leveraging open source both internally and in products for their customers. So that's a great thing to know. So if you're a customer out there and you haven't tried it, as Joseph said, you might be too late. So I suggest you jump on it as soon as possible.
You're not too late.
Well, you're not too late yet, but get on it now. Okay, so one more thing, because I know we were about to exit and everything, but I wanted to make sure that I gave Joseph a chance to talk about the Linux platform and Microsoft internally, because I think that's of real interest.
Right. So thank you, Craig. The Windows subsystem for Linux is a new product that we've released. And what it does is it enables you to run genuine Linux binaries, unmodified, natively on Windows. And there's a lot of information online about it. It really works. It's not a VM. And we did this so that open source developers can work with the Linux versions of open source projects directly on Windows and interop with the rest of Windows tooling. It's really an elegant solution. We partnered with Canonical and other distros like SUSE, and it's really a cool piece of technology, and I hope people can check it out.
Absolutely. So you see why we had to add that in, because that's a game changer, I believe, right? So, okay, so thanks again for talking, and we'll see you soon.